Good morning slash afternoon slash evening, everyone. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you were truly alone with your thoughts? Without a screen, without noise, without distraction? When was the last time you gave yourself your full, undivided attention? Let me ask you something that might catch you off guard. When was the last time you sat with yourself? In complete silence, no distractions, no scrolling, no background noise, just you and your thoughts. Not planning your next move, not replaying yesterday's conversations, not rehearsing tomorrow's responsibilities, just being. Strange how uncomfortable that can be, right? We avoid our own stillness like it's a stranger at a party. We dodge our own reflection in quiet moments. We drown our inner voice with music, media, opinions, and endless movement. Why is that? Why does listening to ourselves feel so foreign? We live in a world designed to keep us disconnected from ourselves. Think about it. Every app, every headline, every piece of content is fighting for one thing: your attention, not your growth, not your peace, just your attention. And the louder the world gets, the more we lose sight of who we really are. It's like being surrounded by a crowd and still feeling lost. Isn't that wild? What if I told you the greatest clarity you'll ever have won't come from others? It won't come from validation, applause, or even the people you look up to. It will come from within, from the quiet moments where you choose to turn inward instead of outward, from the strength it takes to pause and say, what do I really want right now? What do I need? What do I believe? That's not selfish. That's not dramatic. That's power. We were never taught that. Most of us were raised to be nice, to be agreeable, to be pleasing, and somewhere along the way, we learn to dim ourselves in order to fit in. We learn to outsource our decisions, to suppress our instincts, to measure our worth by how useful, how available, how likable we could be. But here's what nobody tells you. Every time you abandon yourself to meet someone else's expectations, you chip away at your own identity. Every time you ignore your gut just to keep the peace, you trade authenticity for approval, and that's a heavy price to pay, isn't it? Let's be real. There comes a point in your life when the noise of the world becomes unbearable. You reach a breaking point. You get tired of being stretched thin, of living on autopilot, of constantly reacting instead of intentionally living. And in that moment, you either keep running from yourself, or you finally turn around and face you. That's when everything changes, because when you begin to focus on yourself, not in a narcissistic way, but in a grounded, intentional, honest way, you reclaim your life. You begin to hear your own voice again. You begin to trust your intuition again. You start making choices that align with your values, not just your fears. And let me tell you, that shift, that return to self, that is a revolution, and it doesn't require some big dramatic life change. It starts small, with one decision, one pause, one boundary, one moment where you say, hold on, let me check in with me first. The most dangerous thing we've been taught is that focusing on ourselves is wrong, that it's egotistical, selfish, unnecessary. But the truth is, without self-focus, you lose direction, you burn out, you become disconnected from your purpose, and eventually from your joy. That's not just sad, it's unsustainable. So what if we flipped the script? What if we stopped apologizing for focusing on our growth? What if we stopped feeling guilty for needing solitude, for saying no, for doing less so we could live more intentionally? Because here's the truth no one wants to admit. Self-focus isn't self-centered. It's self-honoring. It's how you build resilience. It's how you stay grounded when life gets loud. It's how you stop performing and start living. And honestly, what could be more powerful than that? You don't need anyone's permission to come home to yourself. You don't need a crisis to choose clarity. You don't need to wait for the world to quiet down before you start listening to your inner voice. That voice is still there. It always has been. It's just waiting for you to stop running and start listening. Because when you do, when you make yourself the center of your own attention, not in ego, but in truth, you unlock a superpower you didn't even know you had. And that superpower is self-focus. Would you like the next part, the power of self-focus, expanded similarly? The power of self-focus, continuing with the same powerful tone, realism, and emotional rhythm, crafted without subheadings or a formal conclusion, just a compelling and immersive flow, When you begin to focus on yourself, really, truly focus, you start to realize how much of your life you've lived on someone else's terms. It's jarring at first. You might look around and ask yourself, how did I get here? Whose version of success am I even chasing? That kind of clarity can be uncomfortable, but it's also the beginning of something life-changing. Self-focus is not about shutting the world out. It's about tuning into what actually matters to you, not what you've been conditioned to believe should matter. It's about peeling back all the layers of noise, pressure, fear, and comparison until what's left is you, honest, unfiltered. And let me tell you, there's power in that kind of self-awareness. It changes how you walk into rooms, how you make decisions, how you carry yourself in spaces where you once shrank to fit. When you're self-focused, you stop needing constant reassurance from others. You stop asking for permission to follow your instincts. You become your own compass, your own source of validation, and suddenly, that need to be liked, it starts to fade, that urge to compare your path to someone else's timeline. It weakens because when your focus is inward, not on ego, but on alignment, you become grounded in something real, something unshakable. The world will always offer you distractions. It will always tempt you with shortcuts and quick fixes. It will say, look over here, be more like them, you're not enough unless you have this, or do that, or look like this. But when your attention is rooted in self-focus, you can see those distractions for what they are: noise. Empty noise, and you stop chasing every shiny thing that passes by because you already know where you're headed. Self-focus sharpens your ability to say no, without guilt, because now your choices aren't about pleasing people. They're about protecting your peace. You start to recognize that every yes to something unaligned is a no to yourself. And that shift, that moment when you realize your energy is sacred and not everyone gets access to it, that's when you start taking your power back. There's also a quiet courage that comes with self-focus, because let's be honest, facing yourself is not always easy. It takes bravery to sit with your flaws, your doubts, your fears. It takes maturity to acknowledge your patterns, your triggers, the roles you've played in your own suffering. But here's the twist: the more you face yourself, the more you free yourself. You start to realize that healing, growth, and transformation don't come from running away or blaming others. They come from turning the mirror inward and doing the work. That's not weakness, that's radical strength. You begin to move differently. You don't over-explain yourself anymore. You don't tolerate what drains you. You start showing up fully and unapologetically. And it's not because you suddenly think you're better than anyone. It's because you've finally remembered who you are. You've reconnected with your truth. And when you live from that place, everything begins to shift. Your relationships evolve. You stop settling for half connections and start seeking people who meet you with depth and authenticity. You stop molding yourself to be digestible and start honoring your boundaries. You love better, you lead better, you live better, and let's not ignore this. When you focus on yourself, you begin to create from a place of originality. You stop copying what's been done and start building from your own voice, your own vision. That's where innovation lives. That's where legacy starts. That's where fulfillment is found, not in what you accumulate, but in what you create from your inner truth. But self-focus is not a one-time decision. It's a discipline, a practice, a daily choice, and it often means doing the unpopular thing, stepping away from the crowd, saying no when others expect a yes, choosing solitude over distraction, rest over hustle. Stillness over stimulation. It requires presence, and that kind of presence is rare. But that's what makes it powerful, so don't let anyone shame you for choosing yourself. Don't shrink because the world doesn't understand someone who prioritizes inner alignment over external approval. Let them talk, let them question you, because you know something they don't. The strongest foundation you'll ever build is the one that starts from within. Self-focus isn't just an idea, it's a form of power. Quiet, bold, transformative, and once you learn how to use it, there's no going back. Would you like me to continue with the next section? The world is loud, but you must be louder inside, in the same format. The world is loud, but you must be louder inside, crafted without subheadings or a conclusion, and written in the same emotionally resonant, professional voice as before. The world is loud, It's louder than it's ever been. Voices are everywhere, scrolling past your fingertips, streaming through your headphones, shouting from your screen. Every second, someone is telling you who to be, what to buy, where to go, what to think, how to feel. The noise never stops, it's constant, it's relentless, and if you're not careful, that noise can drown out the most important voice of all, your own. It's easy to get swept up in it, it happens so subtly. You open your phone to check one thing and suddenly, 30 minutes later, you're questioning your choices, doubting your direction, and comparing your entire life to a highlight reel curated by people you don't even know. Isn't it wild? We live in an age where we're more connected than ever, yet so many people feel disconnected from themselves, disconnected from their purpose, from their own truth. The world will never stop being loud. It's built that way, it's designed to keep your attention outside of you, to keep you distracted, to keep you consuming, but here's the part no one tells you. You don't have to listen to all of it. You don't have to let it in. In fact, you can't afford to, because if you give every voice in the world access to your mind will forget what your own voice even sounds like. You have to be louder inside, louder in conviction, louder in values, louder in clarity. That doesn't mean screaming back. It means becoming so rooted in who you are that no external noise can pull you off track. It means cultivating an inner voice so strong, so grounded, that it becomes your compass, even when the world tries to sell you a different direction. Being louder inside is about emotional discipline. It's about not reacting to every opinion, not chasing every trend, not getting triggered by every post, every piece of judgment, every glance or silence from someone else. Because once your inside voice is stronger than the outside noise, you gain a kind of freedom that most people never taste. You stop being tossed around by the current. You stop chasing approval. You start walking your own path, and walking it boldly. But let's be honest, getting there takes work. Because when you finally try to silence the world, you're left with something else, yourself. And for a lot of people, that's terrifying, because what if you don't like what you hear? What if being with yourself brings up discomfort, confusion, grief? That's where most people run. That's where they reach for the noise again. But the truth is, that discomfort, that silence, that's the doorway to transformation. That's where the real work begins. Being louder inside doesn't mean you have all the answers. It means you're willing to ask better questions. It means you trust yourself enough to sit in uncertainty, to hold tension, to feel the fear and still move forward with purpose. And that kind of strength, it's not flashy, it doesn't come with applause. But it's powerful. It's the kind of power that sustains you when the world tries to shake you. Think about it. How many people have given up their dreams because someone told them they weren't good enough? How many voices have gone unheard because the world was too loud for their whisper to survive? How many times have you betrayed your own intuition because someone else seemed more confident, more convincing, more right? That ends the moment you decide to become louder on the inside, not louder in volume, but in certainty, in courage, in truth, and no, it won't always be easy. There will be days when the noise creeps back in, when doubts return, when criticism hits harder than it should. But the difference now is that you'll notice, you'll pause, you'll breathe, and instead of spiraling outward, you'll come back home to yourself. That's the power of self-focus. That's the reward of building a voice inside you that refuses to be silenced. Because in a world built on distraction, being self-directed is rebellion. And in a world full of noise, being internally loud is a radical act of self-respect. You become unshakable. You become unbothered, not because the world changed, but because you did. The world will always be loud, but now, so are you. Would you like me to continue with the next section? Self-focus builds inner strength, in the same style and tone. Self-focus builds inner strength, written in the same engaging, emotional, and professional tone, without subheadings or a conclusion, as requested. Inner strength doesn't come from pretending you're okay. It doesn't come from putting on a brave face or powering through without pausing to feel. Real strength, the kind that holds you together in the dark, the kind that steadies you when life feels like a storm, comes from within. And the only way to build that kind of strength is to go inward, to focus on yourself. We often mistake strength for loudness. We think it looks like dominance or control or never showing weakness. But real strength, it's quiet, it's personal. It's the ability to keep showing up when no one's watching. It's choosing truth over comfort. It's being able to sit with your own chaos without trying to escape it or hide from it. That's what self-focus does. It brings you face to face with your real self. And when you stop avoiding yourself, you start building something powerful. Focusing on yourself doesn't mean you isolate or disconnect from the world. It means you learn to anchor yourself so deeply in who you are that nothing outside of you can shake your foundation. It means developing emotional muscles the same way you'd build physical ones, with consistent effort, uncomfortable reps, and showing up even when it's hard. The more you focus inward, the more you train yourself to navigate life with clarity and confidence. Self-focus teaches you resilience, not the kind that comes from suppressing emotion, but the kind that's built from understanding it. When you know yourself, your triggers, your patterns, your pain, you don't react blindly anymore. You pause, you reflect, you respond. That pause, that space you create between what happens to you and how you handle it, that's where your strength lies. And when life throws you curveballs, which it will, you don't crumble as easily, because self-focus has trained you to be your own support system. It's taught you how to self-soothe, how to problem-solve, how to trust your own process. You don't always need external reassurance. You don't collapse under criticism. You don't chase chaos to feel alive. Instead, you've built a solid ground beneath you, an inner core that's unshakable. It's also in those quiet moments, the ones where it's just you with your breath and your thoughts, that you begin to heal. That healing isn't always pretty. Sometimes it means feeling things you've buried. Sometimes it means forgiving yourself for the things you did when you didn't know better. But through that honesty, through that self-confrontation, you build endurance. You stop carrying shame. You stop running. And you start rising. That's the beauty of self-focus. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been beneath the noise, beneath the layers, beneath the stories you were told. And when you tap into that version of yourself, the real one, the whole one, you access a well of strength that no one can take away from you. People often look outside themselves for strength. They look to titles, relationships, achievements, or praise. And while all those things can feel good, they're temporary, they shift, they fade, but the strength you build inside you, that's yours forever. It grows with you, it evolves. It becomes your foundation when everything else feels uncertain. Self-focus also empowers you to set boundaries without guilt, to walk away from what no longer serves you, to protect your peace without explaining yourself. That kind of strength doesn't always make you popular, but it will make you free, and there is nothing more powerful than a person who is free within themselves. And let's be honest, this world doesn't encourage self-focus. It tells you to hustle, to outperform, to stay busy. But it's in slowing down, in checking in making time to understand what's really going on inside you. That's where your strength begins. That's where you stop surviving and start owning your life. You start leading from within, not following the noise. Over time, self-focus changes your posture, not just physically, but emotionally. You carry yourself differently. You speak with intention. You stop apologizing for existing. You become someone who can hold space for others without losing yourself in the process. That's strength, quiet, steady, real. So if you're in a season of pulling back, of redirecting your energy, of turning inward, don't apologize for it. That's not weakness. That's not you falling behind. That's you building something unshakable. That's you laying the foundation for a life that's driven not by fear or noise, but by the strongest thing you'll ever know yourself. Would you like me to continue with the next section, realignment, not isolation, in the same 700-word format and tone? Realignment, not isolation, written with the same emotional depth, professional tone, and immersive flow, without subheadings or a conclusion, as you requested. Choosing to focus on yourself often gets misunderstood. People will say you've changed. They'll say you've become distant, selfish, hard to reach. But what they don't see, and maybe they're not supposed to, is that you're not disconnecting from them. You're reconnecting with yourself. In that process, that return to your own center, it isn't isolation, it's realignment. There comes a time when you have to pause and ask, is the life I'm living really mine? Not the version others expect? Not the path that looks good from the outside, but the life that actually aligns with your values, your energy, your truth. Realignment is that moment when you stop drifting with the current and start choosing your own direction again. And that shift can be uncomfortable, not just for you, but for the people who have grown accustomed to a version of you that you're no longer willing to perform. You might find yourself spending more time alone, not because you don't care about others, but because you've realized you need space to think clearly. You need room to breathe. You need silence, not because you're shutting out the world, but because you're tuning into what you've been ignoring for too long. That silence isn't emptiness, it's clarity, and clarity is where real growth begins. The world often equates busy with success and constant connection with relevance, but realignment asks you to let go of that noise, to stop proving and start listening, to stop running and start reflecting. It's not about abandoning your relationships, your goals, or your responsibilities. It's about checking in with yourself and asking, is the way I'm showing up in this world aligned with who I really am? And if the answer is no, then something has to shift. And yes, when you start making those shifts, not everyone will understand. You might stop showing up to every event. You might leave messages unanswered a little longer than usual. You might set boundaries that make others uncomfortable, but that's not isolation, that's protection, that's self-respect, that's saying, I matter too. The truth is, you can't serve others when your own cup is empty. You can't be present in relationships if you're not present with yourself, and you certainly can't live with purpose if your entire life is lived in reaction to other people's expectations. Realignment asks you to slow down long enough to remember what actually matters to you. Not what you were taught to want, but what your soul wants. And when you begin to honor that, you'll notice something powerful happen. The more you realign with yourself, the less you need from the outside world, not because you're hardened, but because you've learned to validate yourself. You've learned to create peace within, rather than chase it outside. That doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. There's a loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people and still feeling unseen. But there's also a stillness that comes from being alone and finally seeing yourself clearly. That stillness is not isolation, it's revelation. It's where your priorities reconfigure. It's where you realize that not everything that once felt urgent still deserves your attention, and not every voice that's loud deserves your energy. Realignment isn't about escaping the world. It's about preparing to return to it stronger, more grounded, more whole. It's about recalibrating your inner compass so that when you re-engage with people, with work, with life, you're doing it from a place of integrity, not obligation. You're no longer performing, you're living truthfully, and that truth might lead you to let go of some things, old patterns, relationships, roles that once felt safe but no longer fit, that letting go can feel like loss. But in reality, it's space making. You're creating room for the things that are meant for the next version of you. The real you, the aligned you. People may call your silence distance. They may mistake your boundaries for walls. They may not understand your solitude, but that's okay, because you're not doing this for validation. You're doing it for alignment, and aligned living that's not only more sustainable, it's more powerful. It's more peaceful, it's more you. So no, you're not isolating, you're not disappearing, you're not becoming cold, you're becoming clear. You're shedding everything that isn't rooted in truth. You're learning to live from the inside out, not the outside in. You're learning to hear your own voice again, and in that quiet, powerful space you're not lost. You're being found. Would you like me to move forward with the final section, living from the inside out, in the same style and length? Designed to speak directly to the reader's core, continuing in the same emotionally grounded, inspiring, and professional tone, without subheadings or a conclusion. This is your moment. Not someday, not when things quiet down, not when the timing is perfect. Now. You've been waiting, haven't you? Waiting for clarity, for a sign, for permission. But the truth is, you already know. Deep down, you've known for a long time. You've felt the pull, that quiet whisper that says, there's more in you. That inner nudge telling you that it's time to stop running in circles, time to stop outsourcing your power, time to stop abandoning yourself for comfort or approval. This isn't about a massive, dramatic life overhaul. This is about choosing you, intentionally, consistently, unapologetically. It's about waking up and deciding that today, you're going to listen inward more than you react outward. That today, you're going to honor your energy, protect your peace, and act in alignment with who you really are, not the version of you that's been shaped by fear or pressure or the weight of other people's expectations. You don't have to be fearless to move forward. You just have to be done shrinking, done doubting, done living small because the world told you it's safer that way. This is not the season for shrinking. This is the season for expanding, for choosing depth over distraction, for tuning into your intuition and letting it guide you, not because it makes sense to everyone else, but because it makes sense to you. The world is always going to offer you another trend to follow, another standard to chase, another way to feel behind. You will always be tempted to look left, to compare, to question your pace. But what if you just didn't? What if instead of waiting for clarity to arrive from somewhere else, you created it by slowing down, by listening in, by trusting what rises in the stillness? You don't have to know the full path. You don't need a 5-year plan. What you need is presence. What you need is honesty. What you need is the courage to take the next right step, one that's rooted in self-respect, not fear, because when you begin to live from the inside out, everything changes. Your choices shift, your relationships evolve, your standards rise, and it's not because you've become someone new, it's because you've finally stopped betraying who you were all along. So, be bold enough to pull back from what no longer serves you. Be willing to disappoint people if it means staying loyal to your truth. Say no without guilt, rest without shame, set boundaries that protect your growth, even if they make others uncomfortable. That's not selfish. That's self-honoring, and the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. You won't need to explain yourself anymore because your presence will say everything. I know who I am now. This isn't about perfection. You'll still have days where you feel unsure, where the world feels too loud, where you're tempted to fall back into old patterns. But now you'll notice. Now you'll catch yourself, and that moment of awareness. That's where your power lies, because now you know you have a choice. So choose to return to yourself, to your center, to your truth. Choose to let go of the versions of you that existed only to be liked or accepted. Choose to create space, even if it feels uncomfortable, because discomfort is not danger. It's often the doorway to transformation. And you are more ready than you think. It's time to stop waiting for the world to understand you before you begin. It's time to stop shrinking your light so others feel comfortable in their shadows. You weren't meant to be silent. You weren't meant to be invisible. You weren't meant to just survive. You were meant to show up fully, authentically, powerfully, and if no one has told you lately, this is your permission, not because you need it from me or anyone else, but because you already have it within you. You've just forgotten. And this is your reminder, so take the step, start the practice, set the boundary, speak the truth, own the silence, build the inner strength, create the life that feels right on the inside, not just the one that looks right from the outside. And do it now, because you are not lost, you are not behind, you are not broken, you are becoming.